All right, welcome everyone. Today we're jumping into a really interesting La Liga matchup, Real Betis versus Real Sociedad. And we're not just going to look at the league table. Nope. We're going to peel back the layers, dig into the data, and see what story the numbers are telling us. Because let me tell you, it might be a very different story than you think. So let's get started.
Hey, before we jump in, a quick heads up. If you enjoy what we do here, please think about subscribing to the channel. Hitting that like button and leaving a comment really helps us out. Oh, and don't forget, we have a Telegram channel. The link's in the profile, where you can find free betting slips and analyses. Seriously, your support is what lets us make these deep dives.
Okay, so let's start with Section 1, a hidden opportunity. Now, if you just glance at this matchup, it looks pretty balanced, right? And even fight. But we think there's something lurking just beneath the surface, a real opportunity that the market might be completely overlooking.
So that brings us to the big question, the one that this whole analysis is built around. Is the betting market just getting this match wrong? Is there an edge here, a little crack in the numbers that we can find if we just look close enough?
And here it is, the core idea of everything we're about to talk about. We believe the market is totally undervaluing Betis. It looks like everyone is just focused on their last couple of games. Some shaky results, and they're completely missing the bigger picture, the actual quality of their performance all season long. This one idea is the key to everything.
All right, let's get into the good stuff. Section 2, the story told by data. This is where we back up that big claim. We're going to lay out the numbers, the hard evidence that tells a very different story. No fluff, no opinions, just what the data says. Okay, look at this. This is probably the most important chart we're going to look at today. It's called expected goal difference, or XGD. Basically, it cuts through the luck and tells you who's actually been the better team, based on the quality of their chances. And wow, Real Betis is in the positive at plus 2.3. Meanwhile, Real Sociedad, they're in the negative, minus 1.6. That gap you see there, it's absolutely huge. Let's just let that sink in for a second. We're talking about a nearly 4-goal swing in performance quality between these two teams. This right here is the absolute core of our analysis. It's a massive blinking sign that the scoreboard and the league table are not telling you the whole story about who the better team truly is. So you might be wondering, okay, but why is there such a big gap? Is it just bad luck for one team? Well, this chart explains it perfectly. It's all about shot quality. Look at Real Sociedad. They take a ton of shots, but a whopping 72% of them are low-quality chances. It's like they're just hoping for the best. But Betis, they're different. They create way more high-quality chances. It shows they're more patient, smarter in their attack. They're not just shooting, they're creating real opportunities. Okay, so we've crunched the numbers. Now for the fun part. Section 3, battle plans on the pitch. Let's talk about how all this data actually translates to what we're going to see on game day. What's the strategy going to be? And this, folks, is where it gets really interesting. It's like a chess match. See, Betis is missing their star player, their main creative guy, Isco. So their plan A of attacking through the middle is out the window. Their new plan, attack down the wings. But here's the thing, Sociedad knows this. They're going to clog up the middle of the field, basically daring Betis to try and beat them out wide. So the whole game, and I mean the entire game, is going to come down to one thing. Can Betis' wingers win their one-on-one battles against Sociedad's fullbacks? That's it. That's the whole ballgame. Now check this out, because this is a fantastic little nugget from the data. Both teams share the exact same weakness. They're both rated as very weak at defending against skillful players. The guys who can dribble and create something out of nothing. So what does that mean? It means this whole tactical plan could get thrown out the window by one moment of individual brilliance. One magic move from a guy like Ioise Perez or Mikel Oyarzabal could literally decide the entire match. All right, but there's one more piece to this puzzle, something that has nothing to do with tactics or players on the pitch. Let's talk about Section 4, the wild card factor. And yeah, you guessed it, we're talking about the referee. The ref for this game is Jesus Gil Manzano. And really, this number is all you need to know. He averages over 5 yellow cards a game. Let me repeat that, over 5. That makes him one of the absolute strictest referees in the Liga. He's not just a background character in this story. He could be the main character. And look, it's not just him. When you start adding up the evidence, it's pretty much a slam dunk.
First, you've got this super strict ref. Then you add in that Real Sociedad is the second most fouling team in the whole league. And get this, the ref has a history with them. He's sent their players off before. You put all that together, it's like the perfect storm for a game filled with yellow and maybe even red cards.
Okay, so here we are, the final section, the final analysis. We've looked at the hidden data, we've broken down the tactics, and we've talked about the wild card referee. Now, let's put all the pieces together and see what the final picture looks like. So, based on everything we've just talked about, here are the potential outcomes the data seems to be pointing to. First, a Real Betis win, which makes sense given that massive XGD advantage. Next, over 5.5 total cards. That's all about the strict ref and Sociedad's fouling. Then, over 10.5 corners, which is a direct result of Sociedad's style of play. And finally, both teams to score? Well, we saw that both defenses have a weakness against skillful players, so that lines up too. And of course, I have to say this very clearly, this is absolutely not investment advice. Think of this as an educational deep dive, something for entertainment. We're just exploring what the data says. So, at the end of the day, here's what it all comes down to. The data tells one story, a story of hidden quality, of tactical chess, of outside factors. But the scoreboard, well, that often tells another. The only question left is, which story is going to be the true one when that final whistle blows? Thanks for tuning in. All right, let's talk Lyon versus Angers. Now, at first glance, this looks like a slam dunk for Lyon, right? A simple home win. But what if I told you the data is screaming a different story? A story that the market seems to be completely missing. Let's dig in and see what's really going on. And hey, before we get into the nitty-gritty, if you enjoy this kind of deep dive, do us a huge favor. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment. It really helps us out. Oh, and for some free betting slips and more analysis, you can join our Telegram channel. The link is right there in the profile. So this is the story everyone's telling. You've got Lyon, the big favorite. They're a beast at home, and they usually walk all over Angers. And then you have Angers, the stubborn underdog. They'll put up a fight. They're tough to break down. But in the end, they're just not expected to win. That's the conventional wisdom, right? But what if that's just wrong? What if the numbers are telling a totally different tale, a story that's hidden from plain sight? That's what we're here to find out. Let's see what the data really says. Okay, so first up, Lyon, the supposed favorite. But when you pull back the curtain, things don't look so rosy. In fact, you start to see some major cracks appearing in their armor. And look, we're not talking about a couple of bench players being out. This is the absolute core of the team. We're talking about their goalkeeper, two crucial midfielders, one of whom is suspended, and their starting left back. It's like someone just pulled the entire spine out of the team. This isn't just a setback, it's a full-blown crisis for them. And this creates what the analysis calls a cascade effect. See, it's not just about 4 empty spots on the field. It's about the entire system breaking down. The flow from defense to attack, it's gone. Their whole game plan is suddenly slower, way more predictable, and honestly, just a lot weaker. Okay, so while Lyon is falling apart, let's flip over to Angers, because they have something pretty special going on, a secret weapon, you could say. And the crazy part is, it's been hiding in the stats this whole time. Just look at this. Based on the stats, the expected goals against, Angers should have let in nearly 6 goals by now. That's what the quality of the shots against them says. But the reality? They've only conceded 3. That's a massive difference. So what gives? How on earth are they defying the numbers like this? Well, the answer is one man, Hervé Coffey, their goalkeeper. This number right here, 4.3, that's how many goals he has personally stopped that should have gone in. And that's the best in the entire league. The guy is playing like an absolute wall, just shutting down everything that comes his way. Now, let's be real for a second. While their defense is heroic, their attack is, well, it's one of the weakest in League One. They just don't score a lot of goals. And that piece of information is absolutely key, because it starts to paint a picture of a really tight, low-scoring game. So you've got a wounded Lyon and an Angers team with an amazing keeper but a weak attack. When you put those two things together, you get a very specific kind of game. Let's break down exactly how this tactical mismatch is going to play out. Picture this. Lyon is going to have the ball pretty much the whole game. They'll be pushing forward, sending crosses into the box, taking shot after shot. And what's Angers going to do? They're going to park the bus, sit back in a deep, compact shell, absorb all that pressure, block everything they can, and just trust their goalie to save the day. It's a classic attack versus defense scenario. And that kind of game creates some wild stats, especially when you look at corner kicks. Check this out. Lyon racks up over 6 corners a game on average, while Angers barely gets 2. But look at how many Angers gives up, 7.5. It makes perfect sense, right? All of Lyon's attacks are just going to be smashed against that defensive wall and deflected out for a corner, again and again and again.
All right, so let's put it all together. We've seen the injuries, the super goalie, and the tactical setup. What's the final verdict from this whole data-driven analysis?
This is the bottom line. The market is betting on Lyon's big name, on their reputation. They're not looking at the team that's actually going to be on the field. They are completely overlooking this injury crisis, which means there's a huge gap between what the odds say and what's likely to happen.
So, to recap, our whole case rests on these 4 key points. 1. Lyon's spine is broken. 2. Angers' keeper is on fire. 3. That combo screams low-scoring game. And 4. The way the game will be played means a ton of corners for Lyon no matter who wins.
So where does that leave us? Well, the analysis suggests a few things. First, with Lyon's attack being so weak and Angers' keeper being so strong, looking at under 2.5 goals makes a lot of sense. Second, because a big Lyon win seems really unlikely, Angers plus 1.5 is logical, meaning they could lose by 1 goal, draw, or even win. And finally, given that attack versus defense setup, Lyon over 8.5 corners seems almost inevitable. And just a quick reminder, everyone, this is all based on the source's analysis. It is absolutely not investment advice, so please always be responsible. You know, the real lesson here isn't just about this one match. It's a bigger idea. It's about learning to look past the big names and the headlines and digging into the data to find the story that nobody else is seeing.
So that's what I'll leave you with. What other obvious results out there are just waiting to be turned upside down by the real story hidden in the numbers? Something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in. All right, let's break down a fascinating Super League matchup. We're talking about Göztepe versus Beşiktaş. And this is a classic story, a defensive fortress going up against a wounded giant. It's a real battle of current form against historical reputation. And I think the tactical details here are going to surprise you. Okay, so what this match really boils down to is a simple, powerful conflict. On one side, you've got Göztepe, a team that has built an absolutely rock-solid defensive wall. And on the other, you have Beşiktaş, a team loaded with star power, but one that looks incredibly fragile right now, especially when they're playing away from home. And hey, real quick, before we get into the nitty-gritty, if you're enjoying these tactical deep dives, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and give us a like. And for even more analysis, you can join our Telegram channel. The link is right there in the profile. Okay, let's get to it. First up, let's talk about the home side. We're calling Göztepe the Fortress. And believe me, it's for a very, very good reason. They have been an incredibly tough nut to crack all season long. So, check this out. 0. What does that mean? It's the number of times Göztepe have lost in their first 5 matches. That's right, they are completely and utterly unbeaten. And if you thought that was impressive, get this. In those 5 unbeaten games, they've let in just 2 goals. 2! That gives them the single best defensive record in the entire Super League. It's just incredible stuff. Now, this isn't some lucky streak, right? This is all by design. We're talking about what's known as the Stoilov system. The manager, Stanimir Stoilov, has implemented this absolute masterclass in organization. It's all built on defensive discipline and lightning-fast counterattacks from a super compact 4-2-3-1 formation. And well, the results speak for themselves. Okay, so on the other side of the pitch, you've got Beşiktaş. They are, without a doubt, a giant of Turkish football. But right now, they are a wounded giant, and they're being plagued by some serious inconsistency. You look at their roster, and on paper, they should be blowing teams away. But the reality, it's been a total roller coaster. They look pretty solid when they're playing at home, but the second they hit the road, well, it's a completely different story. They've already lost their only away match so far this season. But look, this isn't just about them being a bit off their game. This is a full-blown personnel crisis, and it's all happening right in the heart of their team, the midfield. I mean, just look at this list. Their entire engine room has been completely ripped out. Kokcu is out with a suspension, Ndidi's injured. Their whole central partnership is just gone. And if you need any more proof that something's seriously wrong, here's that number again, 0. But this time, it's their goal difference. For a team that has guys like Tammy Abraham and Rafa Silva up front,
A goal difference of 0 is a massive, massive red flag. It tells you their attack just isn't doing nearly enough to cover up the cracks at the back.
So this all leads us to the one place where this match is going to be won or lost. Forget everything else for a second. It is all about the battle in the middle of the park. This is the tactical heart of the whole thing.
And this is where you really see the core of the problem for the visitors. On one side, you've got Göztepe's engine room, Dennis and Rolny. These guys are a well-oiled machine. They know their jobs, they're disciplined, and who are they up against? A makeshift, thrown-together pairing for Beşiktaş. This isn't just a small difference, it's a huge tactical mismatch, and it's a massive advantage for Göztepe.
So that brings us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? How on earth is Beşiktaş, with a midfield that's been completely crippled, supposed to break down the best defense in the entire league? Seriously, where are the goals going to come from?
Now, you might look at the history books and think, oh, Beşiktaş usually has the upper hand. But you've got to look at what's been happening lately. The tide is absolutely turning. In their last 3 games against each other, Göztepe hasn't lost once. In fact, they've outscored Beşiktaş 8-4. All the momentum is with the home team here.
All right, so we've looked at the fortress, we've looked at the wounded giant. Let's put all the pieces together and make our final call on how this tactical chess match is going to play out.
You know, one of our sources really hit the nail on the head with this. It all comes down to this. Can Stoylov's organized, disciplined unit shut down the occasional flashes of brilliance from Beşiktaş's star players? Especially when those stars are way out of their comfort zone and missing their key support players. It's the classic matchup, system versus individual talent. So what's the verdict? When you factor in Göztepe's rock-solid defense, and then you add in Beşiktaş's absolute crisis in the midfield, and then you look at the way the recent head-to-head games have gone, well, the picture starts to get pretty clear, doesn't it? Okay, so based on everything we've just gone through, our analysis points to a few key things. First, taking Göztepe with a draw-no-bet handicap feels like a solid move. It gives you that all-important safety net. Second, this just screams a low-scoring game, doesn't it? So total goals under 2.5 makes a ton of sense. And finally, with that Göztepe defense and Beşiktaş's struggles to create, we think there's a really good chance that at least one of these teams fails to score. And look, we have to say this, and it's super important. This is our analysis of the game. It is not investment advice. So please, whatever you decide to do, always be responsible with your choices. The real question now is whether Beşiktaş's raw talent can somehow overcome a broken system, or if disciplined organization will win the day. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
All right, let's dive into a really fascinating Bundesliga matchup. VfB Stuttgart taking on FC St. Pauli. Now, on the surface, this looks like a pretty classic case, right? The established team at home is the favorite. But what we're actually looking at is a real clash between what the market thinks will happen and what the cold, hard data's screaming at us. Let's get into it. So, if you look at the betting markets, they've made up their mind. They see Stuttgart playing at home as the clear favorite. We're talking about a 58% chance of winning. You know, it feels like a story we've seen 1,000 times before. Seems pretty straightforward.
But hang on a second. Is it? Because when you start to peel back the layers and actually look at the performance data, a totally different story starts to emerge. And it's one that suggests the market might be sleeping on a team that is playing some seriously good football.
Dear viewers, please subscribe to the channel. Support us with your likes and comments. And also join our Telegram channel through the link in the profile for free betting slips and analyses.
Okay, so let's start with the market's logic. The general thinking is, Stuttgart is the established Bundesliga club. They should be able to take care of business at home against a newly promoted team. This is our starting point, the popular opinion, the myth, if you will, that we're about to put to the test.
And boom, right away we see the first little crack in that myth. Just look at the recent form. Stuttgart has been struggling, dropping 2 of their first 3. Meanwhile, St. Pauli is absolutely flying. They haven't lost a single game. I mean, the contrast here is just night and day. One team is stumbling, the other is soaring.
But, form is really just the tip of the iceberg. It tells you what happened, sure, but it doesn't tell you how or why. To really get what's going on, we need to pop the hood and look at the engine, the underlying numbers that show us how good these teams actually are.
And here we go. This right here is a stat that changes the entire conversation. Expected goal difference is maybe the best way to measure a team's true performance. And look at this. St. Pauli
is a massive plus 0.60, meaning they consistently create better chances than they give up. Stuttgart, they're in the negative. The main takeaway here is huge. St. Pauli isn't just getting lucky, they are genuinely outplaying their opponents and outperforming Stuttgart by a wide margin.
And for anyone who's not totally familiar with this, just a quick rundown. Expected goals, or XG, doesn't just count how many shots a team takes, it measures the quality of those shots. So a tap-in from 6 yards out has a high XG, while a wild shot from midfield has a really low one. It basically tells us who's creating the real, clear-cut chances to score.
Now, let's break that down even more, because this is where it gets absolutely wild. St. Pauli is creating 1.5 expected goals per game. That's elite-level stuff. And defensively, their XG against is just 0.90, one of the best in the entire league. But check out that average shot quality. It means every single shot St. Pauli takes is, on average, over 60% more likely to be a goal than a shot from Stuttgart. They aren't just shooting more, they are shooting so much smarter.
Okay, so the numbers are telling a pretty clear story, but we all know football isn't played on a spreadsheet. It's played by human beings. And a huge part of performance is morale, psychology, confidence. And believe me, the gap between these two clubs mentally is just as massive as it is in the data. I mean, listen to this quote from the analysis on Stuttgart. The shape of collapse, it perfectly captures the mood. Their own coach has said they can't create enough, and the players look like they're in a total crisis of confidence. They're being called timid and passive. It's just not a good place to be.
And then you have St. Pauli, on the complete other end of the spectrum. They are riding this incredible wave of momentum. They're full of confidence, pulling off results like that crazy 3-3 draw with Dortmund. The whole vibe around the team is just pure positive energy. You couldn't find two teams in more opposite headspaces right now. It's just striking.
And if you want to see that quantified, just look at this. We're talking an estimated confidence score of 20 out of 100 for Stuttgart, compared to a sky-high 90 for St. Pauli. And let me tell you, this isn't just about feeling good. Confidence directly affects every decision, every pass, every tackle on that field.
So what happens when you put all this together on the pitch? You've got one team with amazing data and soaring morale, and another with terrible data and a confidence crisis. How does that play out tactically? Well, it looks like it could create a perfect storm.
So here's the big problem for Stuttgart. Their coach uses this very complex, high-risk system that's all about possession. Now, when it works, it's brilliant, but it absolutely demands that players are brave and confident on the ball. When you try to play that way with zero confidence, it's a recipe for disaster. It just leads to critical mistakes. Oh, and to make it all worse, their best finisher, Dennis Undav, is injured. And what's crazy is that St. Pauli's system is like kryptonite for this fragile Stuttgart team. They are masters of controlling the midfield and winning the ball back. So they're going to press those nervous Stuttgart players and force exactly the kinds of errors we're talking about. And that corner stat is just insane, by the way. Conceding only 1.7 per game, that tells you just how organized and in control their defense is. All right, let's pull all these threads together. We've seen the market's perception, we've gone deep into the data, we've looked at the psychology of both teams, and we've analyzed the tactical clash. The picture that's emerging is, well, it's pretty clear, isn't it? So let's just recap why the market might be getting this one wrong. 1. Form. St. Pauli is on fire, Stuttgart is not. 2. Data. The underlying numbers aren't just a little better for St. Pauli, they're vastly better. 3. Morale. You've got one team on top of the world and another in a total crisis. And 4. Tactics. St. Pauli's game plan seems tailor-made to exploit Stuttgart's biggest weaknesses.
So after that deep dive, where does the analysis land? Well, the data points towards a few interesting possibilities. A game with a low number of corners seems likely. A draw looks like a very strong possibility. It's likely both teams will manage to score, and that leads to a potential 1-1 scoreline as a really logical outcome. And of course, just a reminder, this is simply an explanation of a data-driven analysis. It is not investment advice. So we'll leave you with this to think about. When you see a huge gap like this, a real disconnect between what the market believes and what the data is showing, where do you think the true story is? This whole thing is just a fantastic example of why digging beneath the surface can reveal some incredible insights. Thanks for joining us.
All right, welcome back. Today, we are sinking our teeth into a really interesting Serie A clash, Lecce versus Cagliari. Now, on the surface, you might just see another regular season game. But trust me, when you start digging into the data, a completely different and pretty fascinating story starts to unfold. So let's get right into it.
So the whole story really kicks off with a puzzle. The betting markets, the folks who process tons of information to set the odds, have basically priced this match as a coin flip. They're looking at these two teams and essentially shrugging their shoulders, saying, we can't tell them apart.
And that, right there, is the big question for us today. Because whenever the market sees a 50-50 shot, but the real performance numbers tell a totally different story, well, that's where you can find some real value. So what is the data actually telling us? Who really has the edge here? Okay, before we jump into those juicy numbers, just a quick heads up. If you enjoy this kind of deep dive, it would be amazing if you could subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and drop a comment. Oh, and definitely check out our Telegram channel, the link's in the profile, for free betting slips and analysis. Your support really is what lets us keep making these explainers. Okay, let's do this. So to crack this puzzle, we have to start with the most important thing in any soccer match, right? The ability to actually create good chances to score. And when we look at Lecce and Cagliari, wow, the difference isn't just small, it's a massive, glaring gap. To really see this gap, we're going to use a key metric called expected goals, or XG. For anyone who's new to it, it's pretty simple. XG doesn't just count your shots. It measures how good your shots are. So a tap in right in front of the goal, that's a high XG. A wild shot from way outside the box, very low XG. It's all about the quality of the process, not just getting lucky. And boom, here it is in black and white. Just look at that difference. It's not even close. Lecce is creating a tiny 0.37 expected goals per game. That's not great. Meanwhile, Cagliari is up at 0.93. To put that in perspective, Cagliari is creating chances that are nearly 3 times better than Lecce's every single time they step on the pitch. And if you want one single number that shows just how much trouble Lecce is in, this is it, negative 1.13. That's their expected goal difference per game. That means, based on the chances they create versus the chances they give up, the stats say they should lose every game by more than a goal. That, my friends, is the statistical signature of a team fighting relegation. And here's the thing, it's not just one quirky stat. The data tells the same story across the board. Look at their expected goals, look at the number of shots, look at the average quality of those shots. It's all the same. Cagliari's whole process for creating chances is just fundamentally healthier. So while the market is calling this a coin flip, the data is screaming that it's a mismatch. Okay, so we see this huge statistical gap. But why is it there? To figure that out, we have to get off the spreadsheet and onto the field to look at the tactical chess match. How are these teams actually playing? And this right here is where it gets really interesting. It's a total clash of styles. Lecce tries to play this super aggressive, high-pressing game. The idea is to win the ball way up the field. The only problem is, it's just not working. And worse, it leaves them wide open at the back. And Cagliari, they are the complete opposite. They're pragmatic, they're organized, and they're literally built to soak up pressure and punish the exact kind of mistakes Lecce's system keeps making. And Cagliari has the perfect tools for this specific job. Their midfield is physical and tough. It's built to handle a team that tries to press them. On top of that, they're a massive threat from set pieces. For a team like Lecce that's already looking shaky in defense, facing a giant-like defender Yerry Mina on corners, well, that's a nightmare scenario. But hey, football's a funny old game. It's never just about stats and tactics on a whiteboard. There are always curveballs, these hidden factors that can completely change a match. So what else do we need to consider here? Well, the biggest wildcard is probably who isn't going to be on the field. Cagliari is going to be missing their speedy attacker Zito Luvumbo, and that's a big deal. It'll definitely slow down their counterattacks. And for Lecce, they might be without key midfielders in Rafia and Pierriet, which could take the engine out of an already struggling part of their team. These absences definitely add a bit of unpredictability. Okay, so we've looked at the lopsided attack, we've broken down the tactics, and we've considered the wild cards. We've put all the pieces on the table. So after all of that, what's the bottom line? What's the data's final verdict on this supposedly 50-50 match? And really, the conclusion from the report boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. When the actual performance data so clearly disagrees with the betting market, the smart move is to trust the data. And in this case, that means siding with Cagliari, the away team that the market seems to be underestimating. So how does this translate into a game plan? Well, according to the model, it builds a pretty logical little portfolio.
The main idea is taking Cagliari or draw, which is basically a bet against Lecce winning at all. And from there, two other ideas just make sense. If Lecce can't create chances, it's likely going to be a low-scoring game, so under 2.5 total goals fits right in. And if Lecce isn't scoring, well, both teams to score no is a natural next step.
And of course, just a quick reminder for everyone, this has just been an explainer of the analytical report's findings. It's all for informational purposes, and it's definitely not investment advice. But you know, the real question this match asks is bigger than just Lecce and Cagliari. It's a classic battle. Do you trust the wisdom of the market, or do you trust the cold, hard logic of the data? Now that's the puzzle to keep an eye on.
All right, welcome. Today, we're diving into a football match that honestly looks like a total blowout on paper. But what if I told you there's one tiny detail buried in the data that flips the entire script? We're going to find it. Oh, and before we jump in, if you like what we do here, please do subscribe to the channel, support us with your likes and comments, and hey, why not join our Telegram channel? The link's in the profile and you'll find free betting slips and analyses there. Okay, let's get into it.
So, take a look at this. On one side, you've got Rio Ave, winless, 0 wins, 3 draws. Ouch. On the other side, FC Porto, an absolute juggernaut with 5 wins and 0 losses. I mean, this looks like the definition of a David versus Goliath story, right? Seems like an open and shut case, but you know it's never that simple. Okay, so let's dig into the numbers. Does the data actually back up what we're seeing on the surface? And yup, the numbers are pretty stark. This just paints a picture of pure dominance. Just look at Porto. They're scoring more, and their expected goals, or XG, which is basically just a fancy way of measuring the quality of their scoring chances, is almost double Rio Waves. And defensively, they're a brick wall, conceding almost nothing. I mean, based on this slide alone, you'd think the game's already over. But you know, every great story has a plot twist. And when you're doing data analysis, that twist is usually one little hidden variable that changes absolutely everything. And folks, this is where we find the crack in Porto's otherwise perfect armor. So, seriously, an easy win for Porto, right? You've got a killer offense, a defense that's basically a fortress, and they're up against a team that can't buy a win. The conclusion feels totally obvious. But is it?
Well, not so fast. Here's the catch. All those amazing stats we just looked at, they're based on one big unspoken assumption, that Porto is at full strength. And guess what? They're not. There's a major crack in the foundation. And this isn't just one player being out. No. This is a full-blown crisis in a very specific spot. Porto is suddenly missing their star center back, their starting right back, and their backup right back. Poof! The entire right side of that incredible defense we were just talking about is just gone.
So, okay, how does this one single vulnerability totally change the game? Well, a problem this big doesn't just stay in one place. It sends these ripple effects through the entire match. And that, my friends, is what unlocks some brand new possibilities. The first ripple, and it's the most obvious one, is that Porto's defensive crisis means Rio Ave actually has a real chance to score a goal. I mean, think about it. The underdog, who's been struggling, is now up against a completely cobbled-together defense. All of a sudden, their chances of finding the back of the net have gone way, way up. And look at this. The model puts a number on it. It sees a plus 5.5% value on yes for both teams to score. Now, what that really means is that the algorithm thinks the chances of Rio Ave scoring are much higher than the betting markets are giving them credit for. And it's all because of those key injuries. Okay, but the ripples don't stop there. Let's follow them to a completely different part of the game, the cards. See, a good analysis doesn't just look at the teams. It looks at the referee, too. And it turns out the ref for this match, Androni Rodriguez, has a bit of a reputation. He tends to hand out yellow cards pretty frequently. So what happens when you have a ref who likes to show cards and you put him in charge of 2, let's say, aggressive teams? Well, the data shows that both Rio Ave and Porto are committing over 14 fouls per game. That's a lot. It's not just one team being scrappy, they both play a very physical style. It's literally the perfect storm for yellow cards, isn't it? You've got a strict ref, 2 teams that love to foul, and you can just imagine Porto's makeshift defense getting desperate and making some clumsy challenges. It all points to a high chance of cards. All right, so let's put all the clues together. We've got these conflicting signals, right? Porto is this dominant force, but they've got this huge Achilles heel in their defense. And then you throw in a strict referee.
So how does a professional analyst synthesize all of this into a clear picture?
Well, they don't just pick a winner. They build what you could call a portfolio of what's likely to happen. It tells a much more nuanced story. The analysis points to both teams to score yes because of that leaky defense. It flags over 4.5 cards because of the ref and the fouls. And it even suggests over 10.5 corners because, hey, Porto's attack is still going to be relentless. It's about finding value in all these different little stories within the big one.
Now, I have to be super clear about this. This is a breakdown of an analytical process. We're just showing you how the clues fit together. This is absolutely not financial or investment advice of any kind. Please remember that. It kind of makes you wonder, right? How often do we all miss that one crucial detail that just changes the entire story? This analysis is such a great reminder that the real insights, they're almost never sitting there on the surface. You have to dig a little deeper, past the headlines, to find that one thing that changes everything. And that's where the real story is.